What if someone promised you 50% profit in just 45 days? No risky stock markets, no complicated investments, just a simple opportunity that looked almost guaranteed. In 1920, thousands of people believed this promise and rushed to invest their savings. But what looked like a brilliant investment opportunity turned out to be one of the most famous financial scams in history. Welcome to Scam Diaries, a series where we uncover the biggest financial scams in history and the lessons they left behind. And today's story is about the man whose name became synonymous with investment fraud. His name was Charles Ponzi. Charles Ponzi was born in Italy in 1882. Like many other immigrants of that time, he arrived in the United States with big dreams of wealth and success. But life was far from glamorous. For years, Ponzi struggled financially. He worked odd jobs, tried several small businesses, and even spent time in prison for earlier fraud-related activities. By 1920, he was living in Boston, still searching for a way to become rich. And then he came up with an idea that sounded almost genius. Ponzi claimed he had discovered a way to making money using international postal reply coupons. These coupons were used to prepay international mail responses. Ponzi explained that these coupons could be bought cheaply in certain countries and exchanged in the United States for stamps of higher value. According to him, this price difference created an easy arbitrage opportunity, and based on this idea, Ponzi made an extraordinary promise: 50% profit in just 45 days or 100% profit in 90 days. For many investors, it sounded unbelievable, but some people decided to try. At first, only a few people invested, but then those early investors received their promised returns. Word spread rapidly. Friends told friends, family told neighbors. Soon, crowds began lining up outside Ponzi's office. People invested their savings, their salaries, and sometimes even borrowed money to invest. Within months, Ponzi was collecting over $1 million every week, an enormous amount in 1920. And Ponzi himself suddenly appeared incredibly wealthy. He bought a luxurious mansion, wore expensive suits, and drove fancy cars. To investors, his lifestyle looked like proof that the business was real. But behind this success was a dangerous secret. Ponzi wasn't actually making money from postal coupons. Instead, he was using money from new investors to pay earlier investors. When early investors received their profits, they told others about the opportunity. More investors joined, and the cycle continued. This structure later became known as a Ponzi scheme, a fraud where returns are paid using money from new investors rather than real profits. But eventually, journalists began asking questions. Investigators from the Boston Post started examining Ponzi's claims. What they discovered was shocking. To generate the profit he promised, Ponzi would have needed millions of postal reply coupons, but only a tiny fraction of that coupons were ever existed worldwide. The numbers simply didn't add up. As doubts spread, investors rushed to withdraw their money. But the entire system depended on new investors bringing up fresh funds. Without that instant inflow of money, the scheme quickly collapsed. Authorities arrested Charles Ponzi. By the time the fraud was uncovered, around $15 million had been taken from investors, a massive amount at that time. Thousands of people lost their life saving. Ponzi was eventually convicted and sentenced to prison. The man who once lived in luxury eventually died years later in poverty. Looking back, several warning signs were already visible. The returns being promised were unusually high and consistent. There is no clear explanation of how the profits were actually generated, and the business depended heavily on constant flow of new investors. Yet, many people ignored these red flags because these early investors were receiving payouts. And that's exactly how most financial scams gain credibility. The story of Charles Ponzi leaves behind a powerful lesson that still applies today. When an investment promises extraordinary returns with little or no risk, it should always raise serious questions. More than a century later, the same structure continues to appear in financial fraud across the world. One of the largest modern examples was the $65 billion Ponzi scheme run by Bernard Madoff. Different era, different technology, but the same underlying deception. Financial scams may change their appearance over the time, but the tricks behind them remains the same. Because every scam leaves behind clues, and that's exactly why we study these stories. Clues that can help us recognize financial crime before it happens. If you found this story interesting, share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned, because on the next episode of Scam Diaries, we will uncover another financial scam that shocked the world. Because when it comes to financial crime, there is always another story waiting to be uncovered.